Howdy, guys, and welcome to a recap of episode 7 of Survivor Season 42. And welcome to Cliff Notes, broadcasting from a long way away from that island. Do y'all realize it seems like we've been watching this season for quite a few weeks, and we have, but in Survivor time, as of tonight's Tribal Council, they are only up to tonight, number 16 on that island. That is amazing. Coming from the Big Brother side of reality TV, Day 16, you barely started playing the game, but Survivor, they're well into it. Such an action-packed series. So much happens on a day-to-day basis. So we're on night number 16. They're over halfway through. And with that being said, we are down to 11 castaways still left on the island. We lost Lydia last week, so we're down to 11 castaways. The tribe is merged, so now we have just one big tribe. From this point forward, we assume everyone's going to be competing for individual immunities. We're in a whole new stage of this game. It takes a whole different kind of gameplay, and we're going to see who does that well and maybe who doesn't do it quite so well as we go forward. Now, I mentioned we lost Lydia last week. We get into the time right after Tribal a little bit later. We've got Mike talking in this episode. And if you'll recall last week, as the tribes first came together, we saw a group of 8 people somewhat come together with a sort of alliance. God, I hate alliances of 8 people, but we saw an alliance of 8 people that formed. Now, unfortunately for Lydia, she was one of those 8. Alliance didn't work out so well for her. A lot of that had to do with Tori winning immunity last week. But Lydia did go home. So now we've got a group of 7 people who still somewhat seem to be wanting to work together with each other. And so Mike is pointing out to the camera saying, look, we got this group of 7. The 4 people who aren't part of that group, who probably are going to be at risk most this particular week, are Tori, Romeo, Chanel, and Marianne. And I think Mike's probably right. It seems like this week could be a little less chaotic than when the tribes first came together, because we certainly do have 4, I hate to say outcasts, because there's nothing outcast about it, but we have 4 people that aren't part of the big group. They're going to have to do a little extra work to try to survive this particular week. Now, before I go any further, let me just throw a little aside, a little Cliff Hog soapbox, if I will. We get a little confessional from Janelle talking tonight. And she uses a phrase. She talks about that maybe she's been focused on some other stuff and not really playing the game at the same level as everyone's. She uses a phrase of checkers and chess. This is a game of chess and not checkers. Can I tell you how tired I am of hearing that phrase? I heard it over and over again during my Big Brother season. I didn't like it then. And now I continue to hear it on other reality shows, including Survivor. Enough. We get it. Chess is more complicated than checkers and all that, but I'm tired of hearing the phrase. So there you go. I'll get back off my soapbox, but I want to throw it in. But again, we do have Chanel as one of the 4 people who's feeling a little bit more at risk this week as we go into reward challenge and immunity challenge as well. She's not the only one. We've got Romeo talking, and remember, Romeo at one point was pretty tight in his tribe. It seemed like Tori and Roxroy were the outcast, and Romeo and Drea were kind of the 2, seems like the 2 tightest partners in that particular tribe. Well, no more. Romeo's upset. He's concerned that it appears that Drea abandoned him. He did not know about this plan to get out Lydia instead. And Drea's kind of saying, I thought Mike told you. No, he didn't tell me. And she's trying to cover it up a little bit. But Romeo seems pretty smart. We hear discussions at Tribal and I about abilities to read people. Romeo seems like he does a good job, it seems like, at least at times, of reading people. And he understands that there's something going on, that Drea is just not opening to him and friendly with him and treating him the way that she was when they were in their individual tribes. So Romeo is also a little bit worried about what's going to happen as this tribe continues to try to develop relationships, loyalties, etc., with each other. And we've just got a lot of people feeling a little bit left out here. Marianne, I just feel for Marianne. She wears her hearts on her sleeve. Now, we are going to see a little bit later where maybe she's playing up the emotional angle a little bit. Hey, work with what you got. But Marianne very much carries her heart on her sleeve, and she's talking about the fact that she's really feeling a little bit awkward and not really feeling like she's part of the group either, and not really enjoying that at all. But let's get right into some of the challenges, because we've got 2 challenges tonight. We've got a reward challenge and we've got an immunity challenge, and then we got tribal council following up on that. Now, we start off before the castaways even show up for the reward challenge. Jeff Probst pops out and tells us, look, we got another twist coming up. We're going to hide a little advantage, beware advantage, which means there's something good, there's something bad with it. He says, we're going to hide it under the bench the same way we did last season. You can tell the way that Jeff's talking. He's a little chap that last year, this little twist was not found, that the advantage stayed under the bench, and no one claimed it. I can't remember right now who was sitting on the bench, but he talks about the fact he's really hoping and going to be really disappointed if someone doesn't discover this advantage this week. So we know there's a little bit extra that's going to be going on, but let's talk about the challenge itself. Well, in the challenge, not immunity, this is a reward challenge. It's going to involve one at a time, 2 tribes randomly selected like they've been doing. The first person from each tribe will jump off a platform into the water. They've got to grab a buoy that's threaded onto a rope, maneuver that buoy, a little round ball, maneuver it through all kinds of obstacles, eventually push it to another platform. Once they get up, hit a button, and the next person goes. Once they've got 5 buoys up on this platform, then they shoot the buoys, just like basketball. You shoot it into a basket. First team that gets all 5 in their basket wins reward. And so, as Jeff says, you want to know what you're playing for? I'd love one of these days, just some smart Alex say, yeah, I don't really care. Whatever. Anything's better than nothing, Jeff. But yeah, show us. Now they're playing for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I'm a big fan of peanut butter and jelly. I could hang with a big old peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But he says, look, we're playing for peanut butter and jelly, but not everyone's going to be playing for it. He says there's 11 of y'all. We're going to draw rocks. 5 of you are on one team, 5 of you are on the other team. One person is sitting out, not even going to have the chance to enjoy this feast of peanut butter and jelly when you get back to your camp. So there's certainly, even just drawing, figuring out who's on what team. There's a lot that goes into these random draws. But we do have one person who's going to be sitting out completely. And the person who draws the gray rock and is sitting out is Marianne. Yeah, no one wants to feel like they're left out and everything. Marianne's in the middle. She's drawn the bad rock, so she's not going to be competing. Or so we think. At that point in time, we then have Drea stand up and say, look, I don't really like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I'm just not that big into this reward challenge. And I'd like to maybe switch places with Marianne instead and take her place, because I'm not going to be eating the sandwiches anyway. Interesting. Is that a smart decision for Drea to be making, or is she putting herself out there by doing so? Just by virtue of volunteering to take Marianne's place. Now, on the one hand, it sure seems like that builds up a lot of loyalty with Marianne if it ever comes down to a vote. So it helps her from that standpoint. But I can see somewhere down the road a few of these survivors saying, well, look what she did for Marianne. If she makes it to the final tribal, you got jury members who are going to be voting for her. She's going out of her way to be nice. I don't want to be up against a nice person in the final two. So I don't know. I think there's something to be said at this point in time. Now that you're back to a fairly large group of people, as long as you don't feel like you're one of the people being threatened, there may be something to be said for just laying low under the radar for just a little bit, especially with Drea, where she has so many advantages right now already that she can utilize if she does feel like she's a little bit under threat. But maybe she's doing it because she truly is just being nice to Marianne, and maybe she just truly doesn't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So I'd give her the benefit of the doubt. But the end result is she does volunteer. Marianne takes her place on one of the 2 teams to compete, and she tells Drea, says, look, if I ever get a reward challenge or something where I get to pay back, you're my girl. So yeah, we'll see if that pays off somewhere down the road. It may be a brilliant move. Now, there's a certain brilliance to it already because now Drea has the chance to find this advantage that's hidden under the seat where the person not playing sits. Could she be enough of a super fan that she understood that perhaps there was something waiting for the person sitting on that bench? We know they didn't see last season, but you still, if you're sitting by yourself, you would think everyone would think to look around and see if maybe they find a little advantage. Dre is pretty smart. There could be a little bit of an opportunity for that because she certainly starts looking as soon as she sits down on that bench. So there may be all kinds of motives that go on with it, but nevertheless, we've got two teams of 5 each competing. Drea sitting on the bench. And of course, we've got the blue team. The blue team looks like they're really stacked on this particular. Now, I mentioned last week, I thought the teams were pretty well balanced. Not so much this week. We've got the blue team that consists of Jonathan, Mike, Chanel, Tori, and Roxroy. Really seems like they got a little more of the physical threat on this particular team. And sure enough, Jonathan starts the challenge off as the first person to jump off the water. Man, he does a perfect dive. He looks like Tarzan going into the water. Jonathan takes an early lead for his team. Of course he does. And Blue actually is the first one to get all their buoys up on the platform and start shooting baskets. It looks like it's going to be another blowout courtesy of Jonathan, but things change a little bit. Roxroy is the one shooting baskets. He can't shoot baskets at all, but you know who can shoot the baskets? Omar. Omar on the orange team shoots 4 in a row, and it looks like they may come back and grab this thing and make it happen. But at that point, blue team realizes it's just not working. Roxroy, I don't know if he jumps in the water or he just steps aside, but Jonathan comes up out of the water. He shoots. I think Jonathan shoots and makes all 5 in a row, just one after the other. Now, some of it may be the editing, but Jonathan definitely pulls his tribe's tail out of the fire once again, wins the reward challenge for the blue team. I got to say, I think that was a little bit of a mistake for Jonathan to show so much dominance on this particular challenge. It's not for immunity, so he was going to be safe. It's just for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Easy to say since I haven't been living on basically nothing but coconuts for the last 2 weeks. But Jonathan, I think he's just putting himself out there. Every one of these challenges that he dominates, that he shows himself to be more and more of a physical threat. I think it's just going to make that target on his back bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, maybe it's too late. Maybe he already has shown such a dominance, and Jeff Probst keeps talking about him. That maybe it's to the point that he understands that it's not going to hurt to do it anymore at this point in time. And it could be. He's talked before, and he talks this episode as well. He's a big guy. He puts down a lot of calories normally, and he needs to do whatever he can to keep his strength up. So I understand why he did it, but there's still part of me that says you may want to lay back and let some other people take the lead every once in a while because he's just so dominant in this game. God, this guy's incredible. I'll say this, win or lose, I'm ready to see Jonathan come back for another season on down the road, some kind of winners or all-stars deal, because he's reaching that level just from a pure competition standpoint. That guy's incredible. But nevertheless, Jonathan sinks 5 baskets in a row and wins the challenge for the blue team. So they're going to get their peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And of course, Drea finds this challenge that Probst was hidden away. If she hadn't found it, I have feeling there'd be some director just staring at it until she noticed them staring. So they really wanted her to find this advantage, and she does find it. So we'll find out a little bit later exactly what it is. Now, I mentioned this group of 8, who is now 7. They're talking with each other. And the conversation seems to basically be this, that Tori is going to be the kind of the decoy target. Everyone expects it to be Tori, and they're just going to go along with that ruse and say, yeah, Tori's it. But Hai is saying, look, Chanel's really who I think we need to get out instead. Let's just have Chanel as the actual target with Romeo as the backup. I thought it was a little interesting. Hai really has turned his back on Chanel. They were on the same tribe. Now, they didn't always work together. You know, there was certainly some conflict there, but I almost would have thought you still keep someone that you were originally with, even if you don't trust them completely, just as kind of a backup alliance. Yeah, you talk to them, say, look, we were together. Let's help each other out as best we can. It seems like she could have been a backup alliance, but Hai seems to have turned his back on her. Now Mike and Chanel, they don't have any love for each other at all. But High is a little surprised that he was so quick to make her the primary target as well. But he does talk about the fact that he doesn't trust her any more than Mike does. So there may be something to that. But that's the situation right now. Is let everyone think that Tori's the primary target, but in reality, go after Chanel with the Romeo is the backup. Now, we do have a little confessional from Omar that's interesting. Omar's playing an interesting game. He kind of led the way that led to Lydia going home and protecting Marianne and Jonathan from his tribe last week. So of everyone on this island, it seems like Omar may have the tightest loyalty with his original players, at least for right now. So we saw Omar playing the game last week a little bit. Well, we see him playing it some more today. He actually mentions that he didn't vote last week, so he didn't really have to declare alliances or loyalties at all. No one really knows exactly where his position lies. He's in the group of 7, but the 4 outcasts don't realize that. And so he's talking about the fact that he can be in this group of 7, but still have some relationships with these other 4 and give a little protection from them, get a little information from them that they may not give to the other people. So Omar's feeling like he's in a pretty good position because he's got connections across the board. And I think he's right. Now, it worries me a little bit if you start spending too much time with people who are outside the primary alliance. Does that mean somewhere down the road that once those 4 maybe are gone, that you're one of the first ones to go up afterwards? That's what I'd be a little bit worried about with Omar. But Omar does seem like he's playing a pretty good social game right now. So props to Omar for a second week. Let's talk about that. But we do have at one point, I don't know, Omar's talking to him. He tells Marianne, says, look, just kind of look to me because I think they're going to try to get you to flush your idol. He feels like he's kind of the leader amongst those who aren't part of that big alliance. And that seems like they're trusting him to some point. So that could be the case. But let's get over to Drea. Remember, she found the advantage under the bench. So what is her alliance that she found? It's a beware advantage. It means it's a good and it's a bad situation. Well, it turns out that the note says that she has to find her advantage. It's hidden under a coconut near the well, something like that. But she has to sneak in, grab it without being caught red-handed. And if she does, then she gets the award that is this advantage. Well, it turns out she looks around a little bit. She finds it super easy. She's already very close to the well when she reads this note. So she immediately looks around. She finds a coconut. She moves the coconut, finds a hole with a little liquid in there. She dips her hand in that liquid. She finds her clue, but she also gets up to her elbow in red paint. That's pretty sneaky. I don't think I've seen this happen in Survivor before where, you see people grab a clue, they stick it down their pants, they're in and out in 15 seconds. It's no big deal. Well, when you got a handful of paint, a little tougher to conceal what you've been up to. Now, she is right next to the well, so she washes it off as best she can. I want to see this another season, Mr. Jeff, and put that red paint a long way away from the ocean and the island and everything else and see how you cover it up at that point in time. But Drea has found the advantage. And what is it? Well, we saw this advantage last season. It's the knowledge is power advantage. I didn't like it last season. I thought it was too powerful. I kind of think the same thing this season, but maybe I'm getting used to it a little bit. I'll be curious to see how it plays out. Basically, the knowledge of power advantage says that at Tribal, Drea can ask one player if they have an idol, or she can ask if they have an advantage. She can't ask both, one or the other. And if they do have one or the other, depending on which one she asks about, they have to be truthful and say, yes, I have an idol, or yes, I have an advantage. And then she gets to take it from them, which can completely ruin someone's day, someone's night at Tribal Council. Now, if she asks them, do you have one or do you have the other? And they say no, then nothing happens. The power is negated. It goes away, and that's the end of it. But if she correctly guesses who has it and asks the right question, she can take away that idol or take away the advantage itself. So yeah, it's a strong power. Now I think I didn't mention the beware advantage. If she hadn't been able to find this clue without getting caught, then at that point, not only would she not get the power, but she wouldn't get a vote at the next Tribal Council also. Doesn't matter. She found it. It was pretty easy to find. So now Drea is in a wealth of riches. She's got this new knowledge is power advantage. She's got the extra vote. She's got an immunity idol. She's got the amulet. She's got a lot of protection going forward. She just better be careful there's not a blind side taking place, because otherwise she's in a great position. But you got to be careful. You got to be careful that you don't get caught off guard as well. Now, the other thing, too, is that Drea knows already that Mike and Marianne both have idols. So if she wants to ask this question at one of these tribals, she knows who to ask to get the idols. So it's not going to take a whole lot of guesswork. The big question for Drea: can she keep the information, this advantage, private and to herself? Remember last season, Liana had the power. I think she told Shan and a few other. She told too many people because it got back to Xander, who had an idol, and realizing that Liana was going to ask the same question: do you have an idol or do you have an advantage tribal council? He handed it off to someone else, negated the power. She didn't get an idol as a result of it. And, Liana told one too many people, and it cost her. Drea, hopefully, from her standpoint, I hope she doesn't tell anyone else, because knowledge is power, not just in asking the question, but also in knowing that you have the advantage itself. So again, Drea's she is loaded up with these powers. It's going to be curious to see when she starts using them. I mean, yeah, you want to get as far as you can and then start using them when you feel a little bit threatened, but she's got a lot to spend. Is she going to use them all herself, or is she going to get to the point where maybe she starts sharing the wealth a little bit, protecting some of her alliances? I don't think we're there yet in terms of loyalty, but we'll see what happens on down the road. Now, it's never easy. It's never 100% foolproof. Remember that paint that she had to dip her hand down into? Well, she cleaned it off as best she could, but obviously she didn't clean it off 100%, because back at camp, Tori has noticed the paint, says something about, "Are you bleeding?" Realizes that no, it's not blood. And Drea gives her some story about she was going to try to paint the tribal banner that they have. I guess they've got paint. They don't really show that much anymore, but I guess they've got a new banner that they can paint and everything else. And so she says that is her excuse. But Tori looks over and sees that this banner hadn't even been unfurled. And she mentions as well that she thinks she sees something in Drea's pants, stuffed down in her pants. So Tori knows that there's something up. She is aware of it. And we don't see a lot of discussion on it this episode. I think we'll see it on down the road, but we do see her immediately telling Marianne, saying, "Look, there's paint's going on. I thought I saw something. I think Drea's got something that we don't necessarily know about, some kind of power." Why? That's my question to Tori. Why bring in other people and bring this up at this point in time? If I'm Tori, I think I'm going to approach Drea at some point and say, "Look, I saw the paint. I know that you had something stuck down your pants. I know you've got something going on. I'm not going to tell anyone else, as long as you and I can reach some agreements, help each other out a little bit." I think she'd be able to leverage it a lot better if she came one-on-one to Drea, as opposed to spilling the beans, and now she's lost control of this information. A little fuzzy here on my things. But no, I think she would have been better off if she'd kept the secret just to herself. It's kind of like in my season of Big Brother, when Christy overheard me talking. If she just came to me and said, "Hey, I heard what you said. I'm not going to tell anyone else, but we need to work together," she would have gotten a lot more out of it. But it is what it is. She's told Marianne, and I think we'll see some impact of that a little bit on down the road. All right, so on down to the immunity challenge itself. Jeff Probst is telling the castaways that we saw it last season. They don't realize this, but he tells us, and he tells the castaways as well, says, "Look, it's immunity. I know everyone wants to fight and stay safe. I also know y'all are hungry, that you may be looking for a little extra nutrition. So if anyone sits out, I'll give you a little single-size serving of rice for you. But if enough of y'all sit out, I'll give you enough rations to cover all the tribe for the next 4 days." Pretty attractive. So he mentions that. And of course, the first conversation from someone is, "Well, how many people do we have to sit out to get the big ration?" Well, Jeff had already told us that he was going to shoot for 6, but he'd be willing to go down to 4 if it came down to it. And sure enough, they start off with 2 and 9, and eventually they settle on 4, just like last season. So if 4 people sit out, then at that point they're going to get all the rice. But that means 4 people who can't compete in this immunity challenge. Well, we see fairly quickly Marianne, Drea, and Lindsay all volunteer. So we've got 3 of the 4. I think that's a little bit of a mistake, especially from Marianne's standpoint. Drea, she's got enough protection that even if she feels threatened, I can maybe see her doing that. But Marianne's on the bottom of the pecking order, so a little bit dangerous for Marianne. But she's one of the 3 volunteers. They can't get anyone else to volunteer. Mike and and so they're saying, no, I'm competing. I'm not quitting this thing. Now, I don't know. I think Lindsay says something. They know what kind of challenge it's going to be, and it's going to consist of standing on a little skinny platform, holding a buoy with 2 sticks. Whoever holds it the longest wins. And Lindsay says, look, I can't do this challenge anyway. I know I'm not going to be very good at it, so I'll sit out. And maybe Marianne and Drea are thinking the same thing. This just isn't their challenge. I'm not sure, but we've got 3 of the 4. Mary gives a very impassioned plea saying, please, I'm putting myself at risk, but I'm doing it because I know we need this food for all of us to move forward. Please, can there be just someone else who, and she says, there's got to be people who feel a lot safer this week than I do. Would one of y'all please volunteer? And eventually Omar does it. And I got to say, I think it's a mistake not to compete whenever you have the opportunity. I truly do. But if you're not going to compete, I think it's better to be that last person rather than the first 3, because now Omar is seen as the one who volunteered and went against his desires and everything and really kind of had to give in to do it. It seems like he's considered a little bit more of a hero than the first 3 who so quickly raised their hands. But we've got our 4 that are going to sit out of this challenge. The other 7 are going to compete. And again, we've got Tori and Romeo and Marianne as the 3 biggies. Marianne's not playing, so it comes down to Tori and Romeo is probably two who really need to win this particular immunity challenge. And we end up with a final 3 of Jonathan. Of course, Jonathan's in there along with Tori and along with Chanel. I didn't even mention Chanel. Chanel's on the wall. She's at risk as well. She's one of the 4. So certainly Tori and Chanel need this immunity challenge. Jonathan, maybe not so much, but he's up there as well. But in the end, the winner of immunity for the 2nd week in a row is Tori. Tori has won again. She had to have it last week. It seems like maybe she wasn't quite as much of a target this week, but still, I think it's important for her to have this immunity, and she's won it. She's the last one on the platform holding her buoy, so she's going to be safe this week. So what's that mean? Who is actually at risk? Well, I mentioned that Chanel was probably I hope I said that correctly earlier, that Tori was going to be kind of the fake target. Chanel was going to be the primary target with Romeo as the backup target. Well, now with Tori out of the picture, it really looks like it's coming down to either Romeo or Chanel who's going to be going home this evening. And we see that we've got those 3 at risk. Now, is Marianne? She's not one of the group of 7 as well. Is her plea going to protect her? She tells us a little bit later that she kind of laid it on a little heavy with the emotional pleadings and everything else, just in hopes that people were going to have a hard time sending her home after such a big emotional sacrifice for her and everything else. And I think it's going to work for her this week at least. But we do see Mike leading the charge against Chanel. Remember, there's no love lost between these 2 former, they were on the same tribe originally, and there's no love lost between them. Mike's leading the charge against Chanel. But and everyone is telling Chanel that Romeo is actually the target. And originally they're doing it just to keep Chanel comfortable so she doesn't play her shot in the dark, or just in case she's got an idol that maybe she won't play it. That's the original plan. But Romeo, you know when you're being targeted or potentially targeted in these reality shows. Just people don't look at you the same way. And Romeo's feeling that. We already saw his discussion with Drea saying, look, you're just not the way you were before. Romeo knows that something is up. He's asking, has my name been mentioned? And yeah, it's been mentioned a few times. And he ends up asking Tori and Roxroy, Omar, who knows who else he may ask. But he's asking a lot of people and getting very nervous, very paranoid that it could be his time to go this evening. Eventually gets to the point that Hai says, look, I know we were going to vote out Chanel, but I'm about thinking now it's time to get at Romeo instead. He's too paranoid. He's going to create chaos and problems in the tribe. We don't need that. Chanel's playing it cool. She's nice and quiet. Let's maybe go for Romeo instead, because he's more likely to disrupt stuff. So Romeo wasn't the primary target, but at least in High's eyes, he's starting to maybe make himself look as like a better target. You got to be careful. If you get too emotional, if people start getting nervous about you coming up to them because you're so paranoid, it makes you become an easier target. So is it Romeo's paranoia that really leads High to want to send Romeo home at the end of the day? I don't think so. I mean, that may be part of it, but I also think that here's the thing. I think that High spent all his time on this original tribe with Chanel. And even though he doesn't trust her, I think that High thinks he at least can read Chanel and know what's going on with her and has a little bit of communication with her. I think he just feels like he has a little bit better grasp of Chanel than he does with Romeo, who he's brand new introduction wise. They hadn't worked together until the merge. I think he just doesn't feel as comfortable with his ability to read and figure out what Romeo is going to do as opposed to Chanel. I think that's part of why High is making this move to get at Romeo instead. But the key, is it going to work or not? Well, Mike still wants Chanel gone. Roxroy still wants Chanel gone. And we get Mike and Jonathan's tagging along. Mike and Jonathan seem very tight. So Mike and Jonathan are trying to convince High to go ahead and stick with the original plan, saying, like, we can't trust her. We got to get her out. So let's see what happens at Tribal Council. Tribal Council, again, night number 16. So few days and so much has happened. But we've got night 16. There's a lot of talk about who you can trust, who you can't trust. And then we get into a whole lot of car analogies. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be the driver? Do you want to be a passenger? How do you squeeze in? So with that being said, I'll throw out a couple of my own little car analogies instead. One, feels like a Survivor right now, especially last week. It's like being in a clown car. You got one tiny little car and way too many people all trying to squeeze into that particular car. In this case, it only holds 7 people, and some people are going to have to ride on the hood or just get left behind, it seems like, because of the alliance of 7. Now, where do I want to sit? If I'm sitting in a car, the Survivor car, I don't know that I want to necessarily be driving, but I don't want to be right next to that door that can pop open and kick you out either. I want to be sitting right in the middle seat where at least if that door opens, I know someone is going out before I do. So that's my choice of seats is right there firmly in the middle where someone else is in control, but still feeling pretty safe. So there you go. Yeah, lots of talk about cars and all of that. The big thing is, with all this being said and done, no shot in the darks are played. No idols are played. Even though we've got so many advantages and such out there, no idols are played. Drea does not answer or ask her question yet. She's going to hold off a little bit. And I think that was a smart move. No need to do it this evening. Do it somewhere down the road where you got a little bit less certainty about what's going on. We get the vote. And the very first vote that was cast was for High, which was kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting that. But after that, we get a few votes for Romeo. We get a lot more votes for Chanel. And at the end, with a vote of 6 or more, but at least 6 votes is all it takes, Chanel is gone. Mike is happy. He got his primary target out the door. And so Chanel has gone home. We're down to 10 players instead. High couldn't get Romeo gone. That was his primary target. I'm curious to see what happens next week. The fact that he was going for Romeo as opposed to Chanel, I don't know if that's going to create a little bit of tension between himself and Jonathan and Mike and Roxroy, or if they're just bygones be bygones. We've got out one of the targets. I don't think any of them, even High, he had already said he didn't trust Chanel. So I don't think it's the end of the world in his eyes that she went home. But definitely there's a little bit different objectives going on with them. Chanel's early game, I think, really cost her at this point in time. You look at Tribal Merge as a chance to reinvent yourself, to play a new game with new people. But she just had too much baggage from her whole deal with her and Daniel, and Daniel threw her under the bus. She had voted for Mike when she probably didn't need to. and there were just too many people on that tribe who didn't feel like they could trust her. And everyone from the other two tribes tended to listen to Mike and Hai. Those two guys, kind of leaders right now, it seems like, in this group of castaways. So when the two of them both said, we're not real comfortable trusting Chanel, everyone else kind of bought into it. She wasn't part of the alliance, and that original, some of her original actions on that first tribe, I think it cost her at the end. So we lost Chanel tonight. We're now down to 10 players, and it's going to get exciting. I'm excited for next week. Again, Dre's got so many powers. I really thought there was a possibility that with Tori knowing about Drea's something going on with her, that we could see Drea maybe in a little bit of danger. And I kind of expect that next week. I would not be surprised if Tori doesn't start spreading the word that there may be a move afoot to blindside Drea, so that she doesn't get a chance to use all her advantages, idols, etc. Yeah, we'll find out. Next week's going to be a whole new week. Till then, guys, y'all have a fantastic week. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe so you know whenever I drop these Survivor recaps, along with my Monday night Cliff Note lives, etc. So please subscribe, turn on the notifications, and a like on these videos is always appreciated as well. Guys, y'all have a fantastic week. I will see y'all next week. Until then, SKD143. Cheers, my friends. Bye.